I want you to take a second and just, look around your hybrid workspace right now.
Yeah, wherever you happen to be.
Exactly. Maybe you're sitting at a kitchen table, listening to this while answering a few emails. Or maybe you're at a hot desk in some half-empty office building.
Right.
Now, I want you to imagine that the most influential manager evaluating your daily performance, uh, charting your long-term career trajectory, and deciding what tasks you actually tackle tomorrow isn't a human being at all.
Which is a wild thought to entertain.
It is. What if your actual boss is just an invisible algorithm?
I mean, for a lot of people, it is a completely invisible layer of management.
Right.
And for millions of professionals who are operating in these hybrid environments, waking up to the reality that an unseen digital mechanism is, pulling the levers of their career is deeply unsettling.
Oh, absolutely. So today, we are going to shine a massive spotlight on that invisible layer.
We really need to.
We're doing a deep dive into some really eye-opening research by Dr. Jonathan H. Westover. Specifically, we're looking at his work on organizational AI transparency in hybrid work.
It's such a crucial paper right now.
It really is. So our mission today is to decode how companies are silently deploying AI to manage distributed workforces.
Yeah.
We need to understand why this algorithmic, this black box, is causing unprecedented levels of anxiety. And most importantly, how the smartest organizations are pulling back the curtain to turn that widespread fear into genuine, measurable empowerment for you.
Right, because it doesn't have to be a nightmare scenario.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because there is a jarring disconnect at the very center of today's landscape. A staggering 76% of Fortune 500 companies are currently using AI systems that directly affect workforce decisions.
76%.
Yeah, but here's the kicker. A vanishingly small 18% actually communicate with their employees about how those systems operate.
And see, that massive gap between deployment and communication is where all the friction lives.
It's huge.
Right. When we discuss organizational transparency in this context, we really have to throw out the old definitions.
What do you mean by that?
Well, we aren't talking about a dense, 50-page terms of service document that legal requires you to blindly click accept during onboarding.
Right. Nobody reads those anyway.
Exactly. True transparency is multidimensional. It means an organization actively explains the core purpose of the AI, the underlying logic the algorithm is using to make a choice, the specific data pools it's drawing from, and crucially, what structural recourse you have.
Recourse. Like if the machine gets it wrong.
Yes. If that AI makes a decision about your schedule or your performance that seems fundamentally flawed, how do you challenge it?
Because without those multidimensional explanations, it just feels like your career is happening to you, like it's completely out of your control.
Utterly out of your control.
So why is this lack of transparency hitting the workforce like a freight train exactly right now?
The research points to a very specific collision, right? The explosive rise of AI happened to perfectly intersect with the massive shift to hybrid work.
And that intersection changes the entire fabric of employment. I mean, think about the mechanics of a traditional physical office.
Okay.
You have what we call the water cooler context.
Right, the informal stuff.
Yeah. If your schedule is abruptly changed on a Tuesday or, a high-profile project gets reassigned away from your team, you might casually bump into your department head in the hallway.
Sure, you run into them getting coffee.
Exactly. They stop, grab a coffee with you, and say, listen, sorry about that sudden shift. The client changed their parameters, and we needed to expedite a different skill set.
So you get the context.
You are given the organic human rationale behind the decision. But in a hybrid model, that informal context is totally stripped away.
Because work is highly asynchronous now. Right. You log onto your portal at 8 a.m. And you simply receive a cold algorithmic mandate on your dashboard.
Just a notification.
Yeah. There is no human around to explain the why.
It's like having a ghost for a manager.
A ghost manager. I like that.
Yeah, it's moving things around on your desk, it's reorganizing your calendar, it's evaluating your keystrokes, but you can't actually talk to it. You can't ask it why it suddenly moved your afternoon meeting.
No, you can't.
But here is the thing. I can somewhat understand a company wanting to protect its intellectual property.
Sure, the algorithms are expensive to build.
Right. If you spent millions developing a proprietary scheduling algorithm, you wouldn't necessarily want to publish the source code on the company intranet for anyone to steal.
What's fascinating here is the paradox that companies create for themselves, though. When they try to protect that intellectual property at the expense of human context, It backfires.
Yeah, so.
Well, organizations often treat the rollout of AI as a purely technical checklist. IT installs the software, HR updates the handbook, and they just consider it done.
Check, check, check.
Right. They completely ignore the human change management aspect. And this results in severe opacity.
So the employees are just left in the dark.
Exactly. Employees get passive disclosure, maybe a buried sentence in a quarterly policy update, or abstract executive messaging about synergy and efficiency that means absolutely nothing to a frontline worker.
Just corporate buzzwords.
Yeah. Or, worst of all, you see incident-driven communication.
Oh, meaning they only talk about it when it crashes.
Yes. This is where a company only bothers to explain how the AI works after the system breaks, misallocates resources, and people are already furious.
That sounds like a terrible strategy.
It is. Ironically, this guarded, partial transparency actually generates more panic than if the company had just remained entirely silent.
Wow. I mean, I completely buy the psychological argument there. Nobody likes being managed in the dark.
No.
But executives don't usually change enterprise-wide policy based on vibes or vague feelings of employee unease, right? Did Dr. Westover find a financial bleeding edge here? Like, what is the actual measurable cost of this fear to a business?
Oh, the financial bleeding is severe, and it stems directly from the psychological toll. There is a specific finding in the data that should make every executive sit up.
Lay it on me.
Employees dealing with opaque AI, where the inner workings of the system are just hidden, experience a 42% higher anxiety level regarding their job security.
A 42% spike in anxiety.
Yes.
But here's the detail from the source that blew my mind. That anxiety is spiking even when their jobs are perfectly safe.
Exactly. The jobs aren't actually on the line.
So they're sitting at their kitchen tables on a Sunday night, stressing out, experiencing intense work-family conflict, and starting to passively resist new initiatives, all over a phantom threat.
It's tragic, really.
They are terrified of being replaced or downgraded simply because they don't know what the black box is thinking.
And trust is the ultimate mediator of performance. When you destroy trust through opacity, you invite defensive behaviors.
Like what? What do they do?
Well, workers will literally minimize their engagement with the new tools. They will stick to their old, inefficient workflows because they understand them.
It's the devil they know.
Right. But when an organization actually pulls back the curtain and explains the algorithm, the business metrics shift dramatically.
Give me some of those metrics because I know they're huge.
Okay, organizations with high AI transparency see 32% higher rates of AI-enabled innovation.
32%.
Yeah. When people aren't terrified of the tool, they start actively suggesting new ways to apply it to their daily tasks.
That makes total sense.
We also see tech firms with transparent AI governance enjoying notably lower voluntary turnover, 28% lower to be exact.
Wow. And keeping people is huge.
Consider that replacing a skilled worker costs a company roughly 1.5 to 2 times that worker's annual salary.
So you have massive amounts of institutional knowledge and capital just walking out the door because of bad communication.
Literally just walking out.
But let's talk about the productivity side because the gap there is staggering. The research shows opaque companies are capturing only about 34% of projected AI productivity improvements, right? Compared to 67% at transparent companies.
They're leaving half the value on the table.
Wait, so if I'm a CEO, my AI is basically running at half capacity if I don't tell my employees how it works?
Yes, exactly. You spend millions on an enterprise AI solution, and it runs at half capacity because your workforce is silently boycotting it.
That is wild.
But beyond just adopting the tool, transparency turns your workforce into an active defense mechanism.
How do you mean?
When you tell your employees exactly how the system is supposed to work, risk identification becomes exponentially faster, 53% faster, according to the data.
Oh, wow. So they become the auditors.
Yes. Your employees become your ground-level intelligence. They are the first ones to catch a system failure or a bizarre scheduling error, way faster than a scheduled technical audit by the IT department ever would.
Okay, let's ground this in reality. We know that operating a black box causes anxiety, destroys trust, and tanks productivity. How are the smartest companies actually solving this?
Right.
Because we aren't just talking about HR sending out a memo with a link to a FAQ page, are we?
No, a memo does absolutely nothing to alleviate the feeling of being managed by a machine. Solving this requires integrating transparency directly into the workflow.
Salesforce has a brilliant mechanism for this. I love this example from the research.
Oh, it's so elegant.
They didn't just tell their employees how the AI worked, they built an AI transparency layer straight into the user interface. It is beautifully simple. It's just a clickable icon sitting right next to the AI's output.
Right there on the screen.
Yeah. So whenever the algorithm generates a schedule recommendation or suggests a specific learning module for an employee to take, the employee can just click that little icon.
And it opens up the hood.
Exactly. The system immediately opens up and shows them the exact underlying logic. It lists the specific factors and weights the algorithm used to arrive at that suggestion. It completely demystifies the interaction in real time.
You're brilliant.
And apparently, that feature became one of their highest-rated internal tools.
It really proves that people are hungry for context, not just instructions.
It's absolutely.
Let's look at Kaiser Permanente for a contrasting but equally effective approach. They were deploying an AI system designed to optimize staffing across their massive network of healthcare facilities.
And scheduling in a hospital is high stakes.
Incredibly sensitive.
Yeah.
A bad shift assignment can lead to burnout or compromise patient care. They knew they couldn't just flip a switch and roll this out overnight.
Right.
So they invested roughly 12,000 staff hours into multi-phase communication campaigns.
12,000 hours.
Yeah. They ran in-person workshops, distributed video breakdowns from clinical leaders explaining the AI's parameters, and most importantly, they built a simulation mode.
The simulation mode.
Yeah. Before the AI ever touched a real schedule, employees could log into this sandbox environment, play around with the algorithm, and see exactly how it weighed things like seniority, requested time off, and patient loads.
Okay, I have to pause you there because if I'm a hospital administrator, 12,000 staff hours sounds like a massive, almost unjustifiable drain on resources.
Oh, it sounds steep.
You are pulling nurses and clinicians away from their primary duties to play around in a software sandbox. Is that massive upfront investment actually worth it?
Well, the alternative is significantly more expensive.
How so?
Kaiser achieved an 89% positive or neutral employee sentiment regarding the new system. The research specifically compares them to a very similar health network that deployed almost identical scheduling technology, but skipped the massive communication investment to save time.
Just to rush it out.
Right. That second system faced widespread resistance, with nearly half their staff 50% actively hostile toward the software. Imagine trying to operate a critical care facility where 50% of your workforce fundamentally distrust the system, telling them when to show up for work.
That's a nightmare.
So friction costs of that hostility, the grievances, the absenteeism, the turnover, it completely dwarfs the initial 12,000 hours Kaiser spent on education.
So what does this all mean for the execution? It means the transparency can't be an afterthought. It has to be proactive. It has to be accessible at the exact moment a decision is made, like that Salesforce icon, and it has to be actionable.
Precisely. The source also briefly mentions Unilever, who built a dedicated microsite that boosted trust by 23% just by being open about their AI.
It's all about proactive context, but I want to shift gears, though. Let's say a company does everything right. They build the transparency layer. They explain the algorithm.
Okay.
Great. But what are you, the listener, supposed to do with that information on a random Tuesday? This brings us to a massive psychological shift. We're moving from the era of the passive employee to the era of the active co-pilot.
Yes. In the academic literature, the mechanism you are describing is called job crafting.
Job crafting.
Right. When a company opens the black box, we see a massive spike in what organizational psychologists call procedural justice. It goes up by like 48%.
And procedural justice just means?
It simply means the employee finally feels the underlying process evaluating them is fair and comprehensible. And this naturally triggers a surge in perceived agency up 37%.
Wow.
When you finally understand the rules of the game, you stop hiding from the technology. You start proactively redesigning your own daily responsibilities to work in tandem with the AI.
The mechanics of how this plays out on the floor are fascinating. Shell is a phenomenal example here.
Shell's a great case study.
They rolled out an AI system designed for predictive maintenance across their industrial operations. But instead of just handing the technicians a tablet and saying, do what the screen says, they held dedicated job crafting workshops.
Bringing the humans into the loop.
Right. The AI was exceptionally good at handling all the boring, routine system checks. Once the technicians understood that and trusted that the AI wouldn't just replace them, they realized their time was suddenly freed up.
Yeah, because they weren't doing the busy work anymore.
Exactly. They systematically crafted their own roles to focus on highly complex problem solving and relationship intensive activities that the algorithm was incapable of doing.
Which is the ideal outcome.
And it generated productivity gains 27% beyond what the AI alone was supposed to do. The humans found high-value applications for the technology that the original software developers hadn't even considered.
That happens because the people turning the wrenches always understand the granular reality of the work better than the engineers writing the code in an office somewhere.
So true.
When you give them agency, they optimize the system organically.
LinkedIn did something similar with their white-collar
Oh,
workforce.
their talent marketplace.
Yeah. They utilize an internal talent mobility marketplace. It's an algorithmic system that matches current employees to new roles opening up within the company.
Right.
But instead of keeping the matching criteria a closely guarded HR secret, LinkedIn openly publishes exactly how the algorithm functions. They actively encourage their employees to go in and continually update their profiles with specific emerging skills that they know the AI is prioritizing.
They are essentially giving their workforce the cheat codes to their own career advancement.
Wait, if I'm a traditional manager, that sounds like an absolute nightmare.
Why is that?
If you tell everyone exactly how the algorithm works, aren't they just going to game the system to get what they want? Aren't they just going to stuff their profiles with keywords?
Yes. And that is the entire point.
Yeah.
By gaming the system, the employees are actively upskilling themselves in the exact areas the company desperately needs.
Oh, that's incredibly smart.
Right. By empowering their workforce to aggressively craft their own algorithmic profiles, LinkedIn saw a 29% bump in internal mobility. They retained their best talent because they gave them a clear mechanical path to promotion.
They made the rules visible.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, what we're really observing is a fundamental renegotiation of the psychological contract.
Let's define that, because psychological contract sounds like something you need a law degree to understand.
It's actually pretty straightforward.
For the last 50 years, the implicit deal between a worker and a company was pretty simple. Work hard, keep your head down, do what you're told, and you will slowly move up the ladder.
Right.
That was the deal.
But AI just took that unwritten contract and ran it through a shredder. Now no one knows what the rules are.
Exactly. The old deal is dead. AI fundamentally alters the trajectory of job security and advancement. The organizations that are thriving right now are actively rewriting that contract in broad daylight.
Give me an example of who's doing it well. Look at AT&T. They're investing $1 billion into retraining their existing workforce for an automated future. But they are pairing that massive investment with brutal honesty about how the specific demands for certain skills are permanently changing.
So they're transparent about the threat and the solution?
Yes. Or look at Prudential. They use AI to constantly assess their employees' skill sets, but they don't just leave it at a cold algorithmic score.
What do they do instead?
They pair those digital insights with actual human career counselors who sit down with the employee to help them navigate the AI's recommendations. Providing that level of transparent, human-in-the-loop support gives hybrid workers a massive boost in confidence, 34%, actually, that they can maintain career-relevant skills.
It's the difference between handing someone a compass and just dropping them in the middle of a dark forest.
That's a great way to put it.
But that leads to our final and maybe most difficult challenge. A job crafting workshop is great. A clickable icon is fantastic. But generative AI is evolving at a breakneck pace. The models change month to month. How do organizations ensure that this transparency isn't just a one-off PR stunt designed to smooth over a single software rollout?
That is the existential challenge for leadership. Transparency cannot be a temporary campaign. It has to become permanent infrastructure. Forward-thinking companies are embedding these practices into their operational DNA.
IBM built a fascinating structural mechanism for this.
The ethics board.
Yeah, they didn't just publish a manifesto, they created an internal AI ethics board. But what makes it unique is that it isn't just a rubber stamp committee made up of PR executives.
Far from it.
It includes highly diverse employee representatives from across the company, and crucially, it has actual structural teeth. In its early years, this board outright rejected 12% of proposed internal AI applications because the developers couldn't adequately explain the logic or guarantee fairness.
They actually killed the projects. Yes, and they forced substantial systemic modifications on another 37% of the proposals before they were allowed to touch the workforce.
When an internal board actually kills a project because it isn't transparent enough, That sends an undeniable signal to the entire workforce. It proves that the company values human agency over unchecked efficiency.
Actions speak louder than memos.
Exactly. Accenture took a different but equally structural approach. They built a dedicated network of 300 AI champions embedded throughout their global operations.
Are these IT guys?
No, these aren't software engineers. They are regular frontline employees who receive specialized training to act as two-way translators.
Oh, that's brilliant.
They bridge the gap between the staff using the tools and the developers building them. For a heavily distributed hybrid workforce, having a local peer you can ping on Slack to decipher a bizarre algorithmic decision is invaluable. I'm looking at all these structural solutions, the boards with veto power, the embedded translators, the job crafting workshops, and it becomes incredibly obvious that absolutely none of this works without a foundation of immense psychological safety.
No, it all falls apart without it.
You have to cultivate a corporate environment where a mid-level manager can raise their hand in a Zoom meeting and say, hey, I've been looking at this new performance metric algorithm and I think it's fundamentally flawed.
Right.
And they need to be able to say that without the immediate fear of being labeled a Luddite or a complainer or finding themselves on a layoff list the next week.
This raises an important question.
Yeah.
How do executives actually build that kind of safety? You certainly can't mandate it in an email.
No, you can't.
Leaders have to physically model the vulnerability. They have to publicly ask probing questions about the AI during all-hands meetings. They have to openly acknowledge their own lack of understanding regarding certain technical parameters.
Got to show it's okay not to know.
Exactly. When an employee discovers a flaw or a bias in a scheduling algorithm, that discovery has to be publicly celebrated as a vital, constructive challenge, rather than quietly punished as an act of insubordination.
The culture has to shift completely.
Ultimately, the organization has to prove, through repeated action, that the technology is there to augment the human workforce, not replace it, and that the algorithm will always remain subordinate to human judgment.
We have covered a tremendous amount of ground today. If we synthesize this entire journey, the ultimate takeaway from Dr. Westover's research is undeniable. AI transparency is not a soft ethical checkbox for the HR department to lazily tick off.
Definitely not.
It is a hard, strategic, financial imperative. If you are listening to this right now, trying to navigate your own hybrid work environment, understanding the specific algorithms that are shaping your daily tasks is how you reclaim your professional agency.
It gives you the power back.
When the black box is finally opened, you stop being a victim of the technology. You can start job crafting, you can upskill with laser precision, and you can partner with the AI to make yourself indispensable.
It completely reframes the relationship. You transform the technology from an invisible threat into a tangible lever you can pull to accelerate your own career.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. We have spent this entire deep dive analyzing the absolute necessity of algorithmic transparency in the workplace. We need it to retain our agency, our trust, and our sanity between the hours of 9 and 5.
Right.
But consider the broader implications. If we are learning to demand this level of radical, multidimensional transparency from our employers about how an AI evaluates our professional worth, how long until we start demanding that exact same standard in our personal lives?
Oh, that is a fascinating pivot.
Think about the algorithms shaping your reality outside of work. When will we start expecting our dating apps, our endlessly scrolling social media feeds, and the credit algorithms determining our mortgage rates to provide us with a simple, clickable icon that explains exactly why they just made a decision that alters the course of our future?
That is the inevitable next frontier of this technology.
It has to be.
Once you learn to spot the ghost in the machine at work, you realize it is operating everywhere else, too.
And you won't be able to unsee it. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Take a very close look at those invisible systems shaping your hybrid workday, and more importantly, start demanding to know how they work.